We're not here simply to speak up for our own area. We are here because we are part of a team. We are part of a common mission to change the United Kingdom for good. An end to centralisation in Westminster and Whitehall, an end to the undemocratic House of Lords, which should be replaced by an assembly of the nations and regions, devolution all round the United Kingdom, including Manchester, the Northwest, the Northeast, including Yorkshire and the south of England as well, and of course devolution extended in Wales also. Now, some people say that Scotland and England are now so different and have drifted apart that there's no common ground between the two of us. As if the mayors here this evening and the First Minister are somehow on a different planet. I tell you, we stand for the same objectives. We want a country of equality, of fairness, of dignity for all, and where it is safe for diversity to flourish instead of the old uniformity of the past. And some people say you've got to choose between being Scottish or being British, and you cannot be both. But what you will see tonight is people from every single part of the United Kingdom committed to the change that I believe we can all support over the next few years. And I believe that together with the declaration we're making this evening from Edinburgh, we can start a campaign across the whole of the United Kingdom so that power and wealth and income is redistributed to people across the country, based on the principle from each according to his capacity to give, to each according to the needs that they have. And to be honest, just think of what we can achieve if we can find a way of working together. I think the people of Scotland are desperate for change. I think the people of Scotland are desperate to see things different. And I think what people in Scotland are saying is we've had 10 years of a battle between yes and no, between independence and the status quo, between Scotland and Britain, and it's time to see if we can move forward and do something better. You know, for 10 years, independence has been the only change game in town. And now it's time, in my view, to look at what we can do differently. And we did a poll before this event this evening, and we asked people about 3 different options: independence, the status quo, or a stronger Scotland in a better Britain. And what we found is only 18% supported the status quo. Only 30% now supported independence, down from 45%. But 52% supported a stronger Scotland in a better Britain. And that's the plan that I want to outline very briefly this evening. A plan for Scotland that is a stronger Scotland with more say in Britain, a stronger Scotland because there's more cooperation between Scotland and the rest of the UK, and a stronger Scotland because we deal with the problems in the health service, in education, in the police, in transport, in housing, all the problems that remain unaddressed today and desperately need urgent action in Scotland from people who care about the future of this country. And the plan starts with one thing. We need an economic, industry and jobs policy for Scotland. A report out in the next few days will say there are 7 major clusters of economic activity, dynamic clusters, that are job-creating hubs that can create more jobs and are hotspots for employment in Scotland. And they're in information technology and digital, they're in the environmental sciences, they're in medical and life sciences, and they're in the advanced technologies and creative industries. And they can create thousands of jobs for Scotland. Glasgow, once known for shipbuilding, could be known in the future as the world centre for precision medicine. Dundee, known for jam and journalism, could be known as the world centre for video games and digital industries associated with. The North Sea, Aberdeen and the North East, right down to Fife Centre, obviously if the North Sea oil industry could be known for being the world leader in renewables in the future. But what we need is a Scotland that is prepared to work with Britain so that we have universities across the country working together, we have investment from all over the country in Scotland, we get the benefits of cooperation, and then we will start to create thousands of jobs in our country. And we need a Scottish plan for a stronger Scotland in a better Britain that deals with the problem that is most grievous and hurts me most in Scotland. The terrible, awful rise in poverty. Now, I was brought up in Kirkcaldy, And it was a town that was undergoing huge change when I was growing up. The mining industry, linoleum industry, textiles going down. And we had slum housing that hadn't been removed from the Victorian era. And we saw real poverty, rising poverty, terrible poverty. And I did not think I would ever see that again in my lifetime. But we are now seeing children going to school ill-clad and hungry. We're now seeing families having to choose between heating and eating. We're now seeing mothers who are ashamed that they've got to queue up at food banks because even when they work, they don't earn enough to make ends meet. And we're seeing charities that are now stretched to the limit, and I know this from my experience of 5, having to give up on helping the hungry so they can feed the starving, having to give up on helping the badly housed because they've got to deal with the homeless, having to give up on helping the down at heel because they're having to deal with people who are now down and out. And so something has got to change. But you can't do it just with good intentions. And I believe that public services will continue to stagnate as long as we don't have a plan for a stronger Scotland in a better Britain. But what we don't need is to spend money on defence nationalism, a separate army, navy, and defence force. Just imagine we're 2% of the land area of America. We're 3% of the land area of Australia. We're actually 10% only of the land area of one state in America, Alaska. And do you really think it makes sense to have a Scottish army, an English army, and a Welsh army? A Scottish navy, an English navy, and a Welsh navy? A Scottish Air Force, an English Air Force, and a Welsh Air Force? Some of them so small that they probably would make Dad's army look like a capable fighting force. And do we really want environmental nationalism? Do we not need environmental internationalism? Do we not understand that pollution is no respecter of borders? And unless we cooperate between Scotland, England, Wales, and the rest of the United Kingdom, and then the rest of the world, the good will be undercut by the bad, and the bad polluter will be undercut by the worst. And that should not happen. We need to work together. And when you look at all the opinion polls, and we've just done one, people do not want a Scottish pound. People do not want a separate border. People do not want a separate customs union. People do not want the defence nationalism, the pension nationalism, the welfare state nationalism, all the nationalisms that would be the product of the current SNP policy for independence. So I tell you, there is a better way. I believe there is a better way of standing up for Scotland. We've got to move on from the old nationalism, which is really 19th century nationalism, that wanted a nationalist state with all the trappings of nationhood, a separate army, separate currency, separate borders. We've got to move on from that to a 21st century patriotism, where we recognize that people love our country, our history, our traditions, and our institutions, but they understand that in an interdependent, integrated, interconnected world, we have to work together for the common good. Otherwise, by dividing, we will hurt ourselves separately. And I think we've got to move on also from the nationalist ideologies of the past. The idea that the world is a permanent struggle between us and them, the insider and the outsider, inventing enemies where they don't exist, creating resentments which are imaginary rather than real, absolutist, independent, nothing else, no compromise at all. We've got to move on to a better view of the world, which I believe is the post-nationalist state. Not the post-national, because we will always be patriots, but the post-nationalist country, where we know that prosperity to be sustained has to be shared. When we know that our independence in this integrated world is qualified by our interdependence. When we know that the best thing is to balance the autonomy we want with the cooperation we need. Self-government, yes, and shared government where it matters and helps us too. And that is the way forward. So I'm appealing to you this evening that we can create a new movement for change. We can create a stronger Scotland in a better Britain. We can meet the aspirations that people have for a greener, fairer, safer, stronger, wealthier, poverty-free Scotland. But we have to do it by working together. Solidarity instead of separate development. Empathy across the nations instead of enmity between them. Reciprocity across the countries instead of resentments and recrimination. And cooperation instead of conflict. I started by saying, just think what we can achieve when we work together. I finish with these words. There is nothing we cannot achieve if we work together. Let's do it.